The marriage contract arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier in a black suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a spy movie, and Clara Foster signed it with trembling hands before she could talk herself out of the decision that would change everything. Her mother had been dead for 3 weeks when Clara made the arrangement. The hospital bills had piled up over 2 years of treatment, experimental drugs that insurance refused to cover, specialists who charged thousands for 15-minute consultations. Clara had burned through her savings, maxed out every credit card, taken a second mortgage on the house her parents had left her. None of it had been enough. Her mother died anyway, and Clara was left with $847,000 in debt and a gaping hole in her chest where hope used to live. The arrangement came through a friend of a friend, the kind of whispered conversation that happened in the break room at the advertising agency, where Clara worked as a junior copywriter. Melissa from accounting knew someone whose cousin had done something similar. A businessman who needed a wife for immigration purposes or tax reasons, or something equally cold and transactional. He would pay handsomely. It would be temporary, just a legal arrangement, nothing physical required. Clara had never imagined herself as the kind of person who would marry a stranger for money. But then again, she'd never imagined watching her mother waste away while collectors called 3 times a day, either. Desperation had a way of rewriting the rules you thought you'd always follow. The contract specified that she would receive $900,000 upon signing, enough to clear her debts and start over. In exchange, she would marry Zachary Cole, attend necessary public events as his wife, and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage for 1 year. After that, they would divorce quietly, and she would receive an additional $500,000. No contact required beyond what was necessary for appearances. Separate residences acceptable. It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was, but Clara signed anyway because the alternative was bankruptcy, and losing the house that still smelled like her mother's lavender hand cream. She met Zachary Cole for the first time at the courthouse on a gray Thursday morning in March. Clara had expected someone older, someone who looked like the kind of man who would need to buy a wife. Instead, Zachary was 32, only 3 years older than she was, with dark hair that fell slightly too long over his forehead and eyes the color of smoke. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Clara's car, and when he shook her hand, his grip was firm and warm. "Clara Foster," he said, and his voice was deeper than she'd expected, with a slight roughness around the edges. "Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement." "Thank you for the money," Clara replied, because honesty seemed like the only currency worth anything in this transaction. Something flickered in his eyes that might have been amusement or respect. "At least we're both clear about what this is." The ceremony took 11 minutes. A judge who looked bored enough to be presiding over traffic court rattled through the vows while Clara's hands went numb with cold despite the heated building. When Zachary slid the ring onto her finger, a simple platinum band that fit perfectly, she wondered distantly how he'd known her size. She hadn't wondered enough to ask. "You may kiss the bride," the judge said without inflection. Zachary leaned in, his hand gentle on her elbow, and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to her cheek. His cologne smelled like cedar and something spicy she couldn't name. Then it was over, and Clara was married to a stranger whose last name she now shared. They signed the papers in silence. The money appeared in Clara's account before they left the building. She checked twice, unable to believe that $900,000 could materialize that quickly, that easily. "I've arranged for movers to transfer your belongings to the penthouse tomorrow," Zachary said as they stood on the courthouse steps. Rain threatened in the heavy clouds overhead. unless you'd prefer to maintain your current residence. The contract allows for that. Clara thought of her house with its leaking roof and the bedroom where her mother had spent her final months. The penthouse is fine. I travel frequently for business, Zachary continued, his tone professional, detached. You'll have the space to yourself most of the time. My assistant will provide you with a schedule of the events you'll need to attend. Charity galas, a few business dinners. Nothing too demanding. What kind of business are you in? Clara asked, realizing she'd never actually asked, had never looked him up despite having access to his full name. Luxury hotels, Zachary said. I own a chain. 73 properties across 4 continents. Clara did the math in her head and felt slightly dizzy. The man she'd just married wasn't just wealthy. He was obscenely, impossibly rich. Why would someone like you need an arrangement like this? For the first time, something genuine crossed Zachary's face, a tightness around his mouth that suggested old pain. My grandmother is dying. She has one wish before she goes, to see me married and settled. My previous relationship ended badly, and I have no interest in repeating that experience. This seemed like a cleaner solution. Cleaner, Clara repeated, tasting the word. Honest, Zachary corrected. We both know what we're getting, no false expectations. No one gets hurt. Clara wanted to argue that someone always got hurt, that human beings weren't built for clean transactions without mess or complications. But she just signed a contract that said otherwise, so she simply nodded. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower in the city's most expensive district. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river on one side and the glittering downtown on the other. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and muted colors. It looked like a magazine spread, beautiful and utterly impersonal. Your bedroom is on the east side, Zachary said, giving her a brief tour. Mine is west. We each have our own bathroom. The kitchen is fully stocked. My housekeeper comes twice a week. If you need anything, her number is on the refrigerator. Clara's bedroom was larger than her entire first floor had been. The bed was enormous, dressed in white linens that probably had a thread count in the thousands. A walk-in closet stood empty except for a few items, designer clothes in her exact size with the tags still attached. I took the liberty of having some things prepared, Zachary said from the doorway. If they're not to your taste, exchange them for whatever you prefer. You have a credit card for household expenses and personal purchases. Reasonable limits apply, but I doubt you'll reach them. This is surreal, Clara said softly. Yes, Zachary agreed, but it's what we agreed to. He left for Singapore that evening. Clara spent her first night as Mrs. Cole alone in the massive penthouse, eating takeout on the leather sofa and staring at the city lights below. She paid off every debt online, watching the balances drop to zero with a satisfaction that felt more like grief than triumph. Her mother was still dead. The money couldn't fix that. The first event was a charity gala for children's hospitals. Clara wore one of the designer dresses from the closet, a deep green silk that clung to her curves and made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. A stylist had come to the penthouse that afternoon to do her hair and makeup. When Clara looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Zachary met her in the lobby, emerging from a black town car with the same controlled grace he seemed to bring to everything. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd been born for this world of wealth and privilege. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and for a moment, something heated flickered in their gray depths. You look beautiful, he said, and it sounded like an observation rather than a compliment. You look like James Bond, Clara replied, and was rewarded with a quick flash of a smile, hopefully with fewer explosions. The gala was held in the ballroom of one of Zachary's hotels, a glittering space filled with the kind of people who appeared in business magazines and society columns. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. A string quartet played in the corner. Everyone looked expensive and comfortable in their expensiveness. Zachary's hand settled on the small of Clara's back, proprietary and warm even through the silk of her dress. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "I'll handle the introductions." He introduced her as his wife with a certain pride in his voice that Clara knew was performative, but that still sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. She shook hands with CEOs and philanthropists, smiled until her face ached, and tried to remember that this was part of the job she'd been paid to do. "How did you two meet?" a woman in diamonds asked, her eyes sharp with curiosity. Clara froze, realizing they'd never discussed this, never created a cover story that made sense. "Through mutual friends," Zachary said smoothly, his hand tightening fractionally on Clara's back. "I saw her across a room and knew immediately that I had to know her." "Love at first sight," the woman said with delighted satisfaction. "How romantic." "It was terrifying," Zachary said, looking at Clara with an expression that might have been genuine if she didn't know better. "When you meet someone who changes everything, it's like standing on the edge of a cliff. You can either step back to safety or jump and hope you'll fly." Clara's breath caught. He was too good at this, too convincing. She had to remind herself it was an act. "And clearly you jumped," the woman said. "I did," Zachary agreed. "Best decision I ever made." Later, when they were alone at their table while others danced, Clara took a long sip of champagne and said, "You're a very good liar." Zachary's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I don't lie. Everything you said to that woman was fiction." "Was it?" He turned to look at her, his gray eyes unreadable. "I did see you for the first time and think you would change everything. That part was true. Because I was signing away a year of my life for money. Because you had the courage to do what needed to be done," Zachary corrected. "That's rarer than you think." Before Clara could respond, a photographer approached, requesting a photo. Zachary pulled her close, his arm around her waist, his body solid and warm against hers. Clara tried to smile naturally, tried to ignore the way her pulse kicked up at his proximity. "Closer," the photographer directed. "You're newlyweds, aren't you? Show us some of that honeymoon energy." Zachary's hand slid lower on her hip, drawing her fully against him. Clara's hand came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under the fine fabric of his shirt. When she looked up at him, his eyes were already on her, intense and searching. "Perfect," the photographer said, and the flash went off, capturing something that felt far too real. The weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Zachary traveled constantly, sending brief emails about his schedule and upcoming events Clara would need to attend. She went to work at the advertising agency, deflecting questions from coworkers about her sudden marriage and new address. At night, she rattled around the enormous penthouse alone, sleeping in the guest bedroom because the master felt like it belonged to someone else's life. When Zachary was home, which wasn't often, they orbited each other carefully. He worked in his study until late into the night. She read on the sofa or worked on freelance projects. Sometimes they ate dinner together, awkward meals where they exchanged pleasantries and weather observations like strangers trapped in an elevator. But there were moments, brief flashes, when something else broke through. Like the night Clara couldn't sleep and found Zachary on the balcony at 2 in the morning, staring at the city below with a glass of whiskey in his hand and exhaustion written in every line of his body. "Rough day?" she asked, stepping outside into the cool air. "Rough year," Zachary said. "Rough decade, if I'm being honest." Clara sat in the chair beside him, pulling her robe tighter against the breeze, Want to talk about it? Not particularly. He took a drink. But I appreciate the offer. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of traffic below. Finally, Zachary said, "My grandmother asked when she could meet you. I've been putting her off, but she's getting suspicious. I thought the whole point of this was to make her happy. It is. But introducing you to her feels like crossing a line, making this more real than it needs to be." "We're legally married," Clara pointed out. "It's already real." "You know what I mean." Clara did. She felt it too, the sense that meeting family, letting people in, would complicate the clean transaction they'd agreed to. "When do you want to go?" Zachary looked at her with something like gratitude. "This weekend. Her estate is 2 hours north. We could drive up Saturday morning, have lunch, drive back." "Okay, Clara," he hesitated, then continued. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's not what you signed up for." "Actually, it's exactly what I signed up for," Clara said. "Being your wife. That includes meeting your grandmother." Something shifted in Zachary's expression, a softening she couldn't quite interpret. "You're taking this more seriously than I expected." "I take all my marriages seriously," Clara said lightly. "Granted, this is my first one, but still." Zachary laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. "Mine too, first and last if this year doesn't kill me. We're only 3 months in, you'll survive." "Will I?" He looked at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I'm not so sure anymore." Before Clara could ask what he meant, Zachary stood, draining the last of his whiskey. "I should sleep. Early meeting tomorrow. Good night, Clara." "Good night, Zachary." She watched him disappear inside, and tried to ignore the way her heart was racing. Zachary's grandmother lived in a stone mansion surrounded by gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. She met them at the door herself, a tiny woman with white hair and eyes the same gray as her grandson's, sharp and assessing. "So this is your bride," she said, looking Clara up and down. "She's prettier than your last one." "Grandma," Zachary said, pained. "What? I'm old, I can say what I think." She turned to Clara. "I'm Margaret Cole, but you can call me Maggie. Come in, both of you. I want to hear everything." The house smelled like lemon polish and old books. Maggie led them to a sunroom overlooking the gardens, where lunch had been set on a table by the windows. She asked Clara about her work, her family, her childhood, with the precision of a detective gathering evidence. "And how did my grandson convince you to marry him?" Maggie asked finally. "He's not exactly warm and fuzzy." "Grandma," Zachary said again. "He didn't have to convince me," Clara said, surprising herself with the honesty in her voice. "When I met him, I knew." "Knew what?" "That he was someone I could trust." Clara glanced at Zachary, found him watching her with an unreadable expression. "That he was someone who kept his word. That matters more than warm and fuzzy." Maggie's eyes gleamed with approval. "Smart girl. Trust is everything." She reached across the table to pat Zachary's hand. "I'm glad you found her, darling. You need someone who sees you clearly." After lunch, while Zachary took a business call in the library, Maggie walked Clara through the gardens. The roses were just beginning to bloom, tight buds of color against glossy green leaves. "I'm dying," Maggie said matter-of-factly. "Cancer. I've got maybe 6 months, maybe less." "I'm sorry," Clara said and meant it. "Don't be. I'm 87. I've had a good run." Maggie stopped beside a fountain, trailing her fingers in the water. "I just want to know that Zachary will be okay when I'm gone. He's been alone too long. That woman he was with before, Veronica, she nearly destroyed him." Clara knew she shouldn't ask, shouldn't want to know, but she did. What happened? She was using him, cheating on him with his business partner while planning a wedding and spending Zachary's money like water. Maggie's mouth tightened. "He found out 3 weeks before the ceremony, called it off, cut them both out of his life. He's barely let anyone close since." Clara felt something twist in her chest. That's awful. It made him careful, too careful. Maggie looked at Clara directly. But I see the way he looks at you, like he's afraid to hope but can't help himself. That's new. We barely know each other, Clara protested weakly. Time doesn't matter. Connection does. Maggie smiled. Give him a chance, dear. Give yourself a chance. You might be surprised. On the drive home, Zachary was quiet, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Finally, he said, "What did my grandmother say to you in the garden? That she likes me better than Veronica?" Zachary's laugh was short and bitter. Low bar. She told me what happened. I'm sorry. It was 3 years ago. I'm over it. Are you? Zachary shot her a sharp look. What's that supposed to mean? It means you built a wall so high that you had to pay someone to pretend to be your wife rather than risk actually letting someone in. The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. When Zachary finally spoke, his voice was controlled. This arrangement was your idea too, or did you forget that you're being paid to be here? The words hit like a slap. Clara turned to look out the window, blinking back sudden tears. I didn't forget. Good, let's both remember what this is. A business transaction, nothing more. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. When they reached the penthouse, Clara went straight to her room and closed the door. She heard Zachary moving around the apartment, heard his study door shut with more force than necessary. She should have felt relieved that he'd reinforced the boundaries, reminded them both of the reality of their situation. Instead, she felt hollowed out and sad in a way that had nothing to do with her mother or money or the past 3 months of pretending. She was starting to care about Zachary Cole, and that was the one thing the contract didn't allow for. The next few weeks were tense. Zachary threw himself into work with even more intensity than usual, barely home long enough to sleep. Clara moved through her days mechanically, writing copy for detergent and breakfast cereal while her mind wandered to gray eyes and rare smiles. They had another event, a business dinner with potential investors. Clara wore red and barely looked at Zachary all evening. He was charming and attentive in public, his hand on her elbow, her chair, her back. Each touch burned. As soon as they were home, he disappeared into his study without a word. Clara was tired of the pretense, tired of the careful distance, tired of wanting something she couldn't have. She changed into pajamas and poured a large glass of wine, settling on the sofa with a book she couldn't focus on. Zachary emerged from his study around midnight. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his shirt sleeves, looking rumpled and human in a way that made Clara's heart ache. "You did well tonight," he said stiffly. "The investors were impressed. Glad I could be of service." Zachary flinched. "Clara, don't." She closed her book. "You made it clear what this is. You don't need to explain again. What I said in the car was unfair. It was honest. It was cruel." Zachary crossed to the windows, staring out at the city. "I was angry at myself, and I took it out on you." "That was wrong." Clara set down her wine glass. "Why were you angry at yourself? Because my grandmother was right, because you were right, because this is supposed to be simple and you're making it complicated. I'm not doing anything. You're being you." Zachary turned to face her, frustration and something else written across his face. "You're kind and genuine, and you take this seriously even though it's fake. You pay attention. You listen. You don't perform for me the way you do for everyone else. You're just yourself, and that's so much harder to ignore than if you were just playing a role." Clara's breath caught. "Zachary, I hired you to be my wife in name only, to show up at events and smile for photos and give my grandmother peace before she dies. I didn't hire you to make me coffee in the morning because you remembered I take it black. I didn't hire you to leave books you think I'd like on the kitchen counter. I didn't hire you to look at me like I matter beyond the money I'm paying you." "Then fire me," Clara said softly. If it's that much of a problem, end the contract. I'll give the money back. That's not what I want. Then what do you want? Zachary crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping directly in front of her. His eyes were storm-dark and intense, his chest rising and falling with harsh breaths. I want to stop pretending this is just business. I want to stop sleeping in separate rooms and keeping careful distance, and acting like touching you at events is a hardship. I want to kiss you the way I've wanted to since I saw you at the courthouse, looking terrified and brave and so beautiful I could barely breathe. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. The contract says. I don't care what the contract says. Zachary's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm imagining it and I'll back away. I'll keep my distance. But if there's any chance you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, Clara, please tell me. Because this is killing me. Clara leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. When she opened them, Zachary was watching her with barely restrained hunger. I feel it, she whispered. I've been feeling it for weeks. The sound Zachary made was half groan, half relief. Then he was kissing her, his mouth hot and demanding on hers, his hands sliding into her hair. Clara gasped against his lips and kissed him back with all the pent-up longing of the past months, her fingers clutching his shirt, pulling him closer. It was nothing like the chaste kiss at the courthouse. This was fire and need and desperation, the breaking of a dam they'd both been holding back. Zachary's hands roamed her back, her waist, mapping her body like he was memorizing it. Clara pressed against him, feeling the hard planes of his chest, the rapid beat of his heart that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. I should have waited, courted you properly. This is backwards and messy and perfect, Clara finished. This is perfect. Zachary laughed, the sound raw and genuine. We're married. We've been living together for months, and I'm only now getting our first real kiss. Nothing about this is perfect. I don't care about perfect. Clara pulled back to look at him. I care about real. This feels real. It is real. Zachary's hands framed her face. I know this started as an arrangement, but Clara, what I feel for you is the realest thing in my life. You scare me. This scares me, but I don't want to pretend anymore. Neither do I. So what do we do? Clara smiled. We figure it out together. Isn't that what married couples do? I wouldn't know. This is my first marriage, remember, mine too. We'll learn as we go. Zachary kissed her again, slower this time, tender and sweet. When he pulled back, his eyes were soft. Stay with me tonight. Not because the contract says so, not for appearances. Just because you want to. I want to, Clara said. I really, really want to. They moved to Zachary's room, the master bedroom Clara had never entered. It was warmer than she'd expected, less sterile than the rest of the penthouse. Books stacked on the nightstand, a framed photo of Maggie on the dresser, evidence of a real person living there. They undressed slowly, learning each other's bodies with gentle touches and whispered words. When Zachary laid her on the bed, his weight settling over her, Clara felt something slot into place, a rightness that went beyond physical desire. I need you to know something, Zachary said, brushing her hair back from her face. This isn't just physical for me. It's not just about wanting you, though I do desperately. It's everything. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, the way you hum while you make coffee, the way you cried reading that book last week because the ending was beautiful. I want all of it, Clara, all of you. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. You have me, all of me. What followed was passionate and tender, two people learning each other, discovering what made the other gasp and moan and shudder. Zachary was attentive and generous, worshipping her body with his hands and mouth, until Clara was trembling and incoherent. When he finally pushed inside her, They both groaned at the perfection of it, the feeling of completion. They moved together with increasing urgency, finding their rhythm, chasing pleasure that crested and crashed over them in waves. Clara cried out his name as she came, her nails digging into his shoulders. Zachary followed moments later, burying his face in her neck, his body shaking with the force of his release. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin to skin, hearts gradually slowing. Zachary traced lazy patterns on Clara's arm, his touch soothing and possessive at once. "I should probably confess something," he murmured. "What? The movers, the clothes in your size, the ring that fit perfectly. I knew everything about you before we met." Clara lifted her head to look at him. "You investigated me thoroughly." "It's what I do before any major business decision." He had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "But somewhere between reading the background check and seeing you walk into the courthouse, it stopped being business. When I read about your mother, what you did for her, how much you sacrificed. The investigator found records of you working 3 jobs during her treatment, selling everything you owned. You didn't hesitate. You just loved her with everything you had." Zachary's hand came up to cup her face. "I thought, this is someone who knows what matters. This is someone worth knowing." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't save her. You gave her everything you had. That's what love is." "Is it?" "It is." Zachary kissed her softly. "And it's what I want to give you if you'll let me. Everything I have. Everything I am. That's a big promise." "I don't make promises I can't keep." Clara believed him. She curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and let herself imagine a future that looked nothing like the contract they'd signed. A future built on more than money and obligation. A future built on love. The next few months were a revelation. They stopped pretending, stopped keeping distance, stopped treating their marriage like a business arrangement. Zachary canceled unnecessary trips, working from home more often. They had breakfast together every morning, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about her day, her dreams, her fears. She learned about his childhood, his parents who died when he was young, his determination to build something that mattered. They went on actual dates, dinner and movies and walks through the park. Zachary was courting her, Clara realized, trying to give her the romance they'd skipped by marrying first. He brought her flowers for no reason, left notes on her pillow when he had to travel, called her in the middle of the day just to hear her voice. "I'm falling in love with you," he told her one night as they lay in bed, moonlight streaming through the windows. "Actually, I think I've been falling since the courthouse. But now I'm sure." Clara's heart swelled impossibly large. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared, good scared, like standing on the edge of a cliff." Zachary pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "We're flying, Clara, both of us." At work, Clara struggled to focus. Her boss noticed the change in her, the distraction and the happiness that radiated from her like light. "Marriage agrees with you," he said during a meeting. "You're glowing." Clara thought about Zachary, about waking up in his arms, about the future they were building. It really does. She'd stopped thinking about the contract, about the end date that was approaching. In her mind, they were just married, just in love, just building a life. But Zachary clearly hadn't forgotten. "The year is almost up," he said one morning over coffee, his tone careful. "We need to talk about the contract." Clara's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "It stipulates that we divorce after 12 months, that I pay you the final installment and we go our separate ways." "Right." Clara set down her mug, her hands suddenly shaking. "Is that what you want?" "No." Zachary reached across the table to take her hand. "God, no. But I need to know what you want. If you want to stay because you love me or because you feel obligated by what we started, if the money is still a factor. I need to know this is real for you, Clara." That you'd choose this even without the financial incentive. Clara pulled her hand back, hurt lancing through her. You think I'm staying for the money? I think you agreed to this arrangement because you were desperate. I think a lot has changed, but I need to know that you're here freely. That you want this life, this marriage, me, because of who I am, not what I can provide. You're an idiot, Clara said, her voice shaking. Zachary blinked. Excuse me, I love you, not your penthouse or your money or your hotels. You. The man who watches documentaries at 2 in the morning and leaves coffee for me, even though you wake up earlier. The man who calls his grandmother every Sunday and donates anonymously to children's hospitals because you don't want recognition. The man who looks at me like I'm the best thing that ever happened to him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I would live in a studio apartment and eat ramen every night if it meant being with you. The money doesn't matter. It never really did. My mother would have died whether I paid those bills or not. But you, Zachary, you're alive. You're here, and you matter more than anything. Zachary was around the table in seconds, pulling her into his arms, his own eyes wet. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot, you're right. I just needed to hear it. I needed to be sure. I'm sure, Clara said against his chest. Are you? I've never been more sure of anything. Zachary pulled back to look at her. Marry me again, for real this time. No contract, no money, no conditions. Just you and me and the rest of our lives. Clara laughed through her tears. We're already married. Then let's have the wedding we should have had, with our friends and family and vows that we write ourselves. Let me stand in front of everyone we love and tell them that you're mine and I'm yours and nothing else matters. Yes, Clara said, kissing him. Yes, yes, yes. The wedding took place in Maggie's garden in early October, surrounded by fall flowers and golden light. Maggie sat in the front row, thin and frail but radiant with joy. Clara's best friend from college was her maid of honor. Zachary's cousin stood as his best man. It was small and intimate, nothing like the society wedding Zachary could have afforded. Clara wore a simple ivory dress and carried wildflowers. Zachary wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. When it was time for vows, he took both her hands in his. Clara, I thought I was hiring an actress to play a role. Instead, I found my best friend, my partner, my home. You taught me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to run toward even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. I promise to choose you every day, in the small moments and the big ones. I promise to make you coffee and leave you notes and tell you I love you until you're sick of hearing it. I'll never be sick of hearing it, Clara interrupted, and everyone laughed. I promise to be worthy of your love, Zachary continued, his voice rough with emotion. To honor the trust you've placed in me. You saved me, Clara. You made me believe in happy endings again. Clara's vows were simpler but no less heartfelt. Zachary, when I met you, I was lost. Grieving and scared and convinced that I'd never feel whole again. But you gave me hope. Not because of what you could provide materially, but because of who you are. You're kind and strong, and you make me laugh even when I want to cry. You see me, really see me, and you love me anyway. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. I promise to love you fiercely, to support your dreams, to be your soft place to land when the world is hard. I promise to choose us, every single day. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Maggie passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks after the wedding. At her funeral, Zachary gave a eulogy that celebrated her life and thanked her for pushing him toward happiness. She knew before I did that Clara was special, he said. She told me to give love a chance. I'm so grateful I listened. Clara held his hand through the service, steady and strong. That night they lay in bed together, Zachary's head on her chest as she stroked his hair. She was ready, he said quietly. She told me at the wedding that she could go in peace now. that she knew I'd be okay. You will be, Clara promised. We both will, together. They worked through grief together, learning that marriage meant holding each other through the hard times, not just celebrating the good ones. Zachary was quieter than usual for a few weeks, prone to staring out windows and getting lost in memories. Clara gave him space when he needed it and comfort when he asked. Slowly, the sharp edges of loss softened into something more bearable. Life found a new rhythm. Clara left the advertising agency to freelance full-time, working from the penthouse and occasionally from the hotels when Zachary traveled. She liked having the flexibility to join him, to see the business he'd built, to meet the people who worked for him. "They love you," she told him after visiting the Paris property. "The staff, I mean. They respect you, but they also genuinely like you." "I try to treat people well," Zachary said. "My grandparents built this company on the principle that luxury should extend to everyone, including employees. I'm just continuing their legacy." "You're expanding it," Clara corrected. "The scholarship program you started for employees' children, the profit sharing, that's all you." Zachary pulled her close, kissing her softly. "You make me want to be better, do better." They talked about the future often now, where they wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20. Zachary wanted to open hotels in underserved communities, creating jobs and opportunities. Clara wanted to write a book, something that mattered. They both wanted children eventually. A family built on love and intention. "I want them to know your mother," Zachary said one evening. "Through you, through stories. I want them to know the woman who raised someone as incredible as their mother." Clara cried happy tears and kissed him until they forgot what they were talking about. On their first anniversary, not of the courthouse wedding but of the real one, Zachary surprised Clara with a trip to a cabin in the mountains. It was the opposite of the luxury hotels he owned, rustic and simple, with a wood-burning stove and no internet. "I thought we could use some quiet," he said, carrying their bags inside. "Just us. No phones, no work, no distractions." They spent 3 days hiking and reading and making love in front of the fire. They cooked simple meals and talked about everything and nothing. On the last night, as they watched the sunset from the porch, Zachary said, "I want to make a new contract with you." Clara turned to him, eyebrow raised. "Oh, I promise to love you recklessly and completely for the rest of my life, to make you laugh when you're sad and coffee when you're tired, to hold you when you're scared and celebrate with you when you're happy, to choose you always in every possible way." "That's a good contract," Clara said softly. "What do I need to do?" "Just keep being you. Keep loving me even when I'm difficult. Keep calling me out when I'm being an idiot. Keep filling our home with your light." "I can do that." Clara leaned in to kiss him. "For the rest of my life, I can do that." 2 years after their real wedding, Clara gave birth to their first child, a daughter with Zachary's gray eyes and Clara's smile. They named her Margaret after the grandmother who had brought them together. Zachary cried when he held her for the first time, this tiny, perfect human they'd created. "She's beautiful. You're beautiful. I can't believe this is my life." "Believe it," Clara said, exhausted and radiant. "We're a family." Little Maggie was followed by a son 2 years later, a wild, joyful boy they named Samuel after Clara's father. The penthouse filled with toys and laughter and the beautiful chaos of children. Zachary proved to be a devoted father, involved and present in a way his own parents hadn't been able to be. "I want them to know they are loved," he told Clara one night after getting both kids to sleep. "I want them to never doubt that they matter more than any business or money or success." "They know," Clara assured him, "just like I know." On their 10th anniversary, they renewed their vows again, this time with their children as witnesses. Maggie, now 8, held Clara's bouquet. Samuel, 6, carried the rings on a small pillow, concentrating fiercely on not dropping them. 10 years ago, I married my best friend, Zachary said, his voice carrying across the same garden where they'd married the second time. I thought I knew what love was then, but every year with you teaches me something new. Love is patience when I'm working too much. Love is laughter over spilled juice at breakfast. Love is watching you be an incredible mother to our children. Love is choosing each other over and over, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Clara's vows were equally heartfelt. You've given me everything, Zachary. Not the penthouse or the money or the life of luxury, although I won't lie and say those aren't nice. You've given me security and trust and a love I never thought I'd find. You've given me a family. You've given me a future I'm excited to wake up to every single day. I love you more now than I did 10 years ago, and I'll love you even more 10 years from now. Maggie tugged on Clara's dress. Are you done being mushy? I'm hungry. Everyone laughed, the moment perfect in its imperfection. That evening, after the kids were in bed and the guests had gone home, Zachary pulled Clara onto the balcony of the penthouse where they'd had so many important conversations. Remember when we stood here and I told you that you were making things complicated? He asked. I remember thinking you were terrified. I was terrified of wanting you, terrified of hoping this could be real, terrified of getting hurt again. He turned to face her, taking both her hands. But loving you has been the least terrifying thing in my life, Clara. It's been easy, natural, right. Even when we fight or disagree or have hard days, choosing you is the easiest choice I've ever made. You're getting sentimental in your old age, Clara teased, even as tears filled her eyes. I'm 38. That's hardly old, ancient. Zachary laughed and pulled her close, swaying to music only they could hear. Thank you for saving me. I didn't save you, you saved yourself. We saved each other, Zachary said. That's what love is, isn't it? Two people deciding that together is better than apart, and then proving it every single day. Clara rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. She thought about the scared, grieving woman she'd been when she signed that contract. She thought about the desperate decision that had seemed like the end of hope. She thought about how the worst moment of her life had led to the best moments. I would do it all again, she said quietly. Every hard thing, every scary decision, all of it, if it meant ending up here with you. Even the part where I was an idiot and accused you of staying for money, especially that part. It made the making up very satisfying. Zachary's laugh rumbled through his chest. I love you, Clara Foster Cole. I love you, Zachary Cole, my husband, my best friend, my soulmate. Soulmate, Zachary repeated, testing the word. I didn't believe in those before you. Do you now? Absolutely, without question. You're mine and I'm yours in this life and whatever comes after. They stood on the balcony for a long time, holding each other under the stars, two people who had found home in the most unexpected way. The contract that had brought them together was long gone, replaced by something infinitely more valuable. Trust, partnership, love that grew deeper and richer with each passing year. Inside, their children slept peacefully, safe in the home their parents had built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, homework help and business meetings, date nights and family dinners. The beautiful, ordinary chaos of a life well lived. But tonight, in this moment, Zachary and Clara were simply together. Two souls who had found each other despite the odds, who had chosen love over fear, who had built something real and lasting from a transaction that was never meant to be anything more than temporary. Come to bed, Zachary murmured against her hair. Let me love you properly. You love me properly every single day. Then let me love you improperly. We're married. It's allowed. Clara laughed, the sound full of joy and promise. She took his hand and let him lead her inside to their bedroom, to the bed they'd shared for 10 years of nights. They made love slowly, tenderly, with the comfortable intimacy of longtime partners who knew every inch of each other's bodies and hearts. Afterward, Clara traced the lines of Zachary's face in the darkness, memorizing him even though she knew him by heart. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm grateful for everything, for you." "Me too." Zachary caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Every single day I'm grateful." They fell asleep tangled together, the way they had every night for 10 years, the way they would for the next 50. Two people who had started as strangers with a contract and become partners, lovers, best friends. Two people who had taken a calculated risk and found the most incalculable reward. Years later, when Maggie was applying to colleges and Samuel was navigating high school with the confidence of a boy who'd never doubted he was loved, Clara found the original contract in a box in the back of Zachary's study. She brought it to him while he was working, laying it on his desk. "Look what I found." Zachary glanced at the papers, then smiled. "Should we burn it, have some kind of dramatic ceremony?" "I was thinking we should keep it." Clara sat on the edge of his desk. "As a reminder of where we started, how far we've come. We've come impossibly far." Zachary pulled her into his lap, the contract forgotten. "From strangers to this. From transaction to truth. Best business decision you ever made. The only business decision that ever mattered." Clara kissed him, soft and sweet, a kiss that promised forever. Because that's what they had built in the end. Not a year-long arrangement or a marriage of convenience. They had built forever, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of love at a time. The contract had brought them together, but love had made them stay. And that love would carry them through whatever came next, through every challenge and celebration, every ordinary day and extraordinary moment. Together, always together, exactly as they had promised in gardens and courtrooms and whispered words in the dark. "I love you," Zachary said, because he told her every day and would never stop. "I love you," Clara replied, because some promises were worth making over and over, forever and always without end. And outside, the city glittered under the stars, indifferent to the small miracle happening on the top floor of a glass tower. The miracle of two people finding each other. The miracle of a love that started as an arrangement and became something unbreakable, unshakable, undeniable. The miracle of coming home.